screen share. All right. So far we've just been looking at stuff that's in files and then creating files by redirecting output to files. What if we wanted to edit them? We've already opened up a text editor, right? We created a LibreOffice document and we created a plain text file. And when we created the plain text file, we did that in a text editor. So on Windows, Notepad is the text editor, right? And you probably never use Notepad on a Windows machine. There are very few things that you need to do on a Windows machine where you want a text editor. On our Linux machine, we're going to use text editors all the time, right? Because we're going to use plain text a lot. And so there are dozens, I mean, there's probably hundreds of text editors that you can use, right? Whatever text editor you use, you just need to find the one that you like and learn how to use it. There's text editors that are meant to be just simple, like very simple, easy to use. And then there's text editors that are meant to be for power users. I'm going to show just 3 of them just so that we get a feel for what these text editors look like. All right, so I'm going to go into my sandbox directory. So I'm going to go to the home directory first, go into the sandboxes, and then I have a directory in the sandbox called temp. I'm going to go into the temp directory. See what's in there. All right, so I've got some files and I have some directories. Let me just create a new file. So I'm just going to list out the contents of this directory, and I'm going to send that to a file called listings.txt. And now let me edit that file in a text editor. Now I could, right, the way that we did this last time was I went through the menu and I said text, and there's a text editor right here, right? And I clicked on that and it opened up. But if I know what the name, right, that text editor is a program, which means that there is a file on the computer somewhere that is that program and it has a name. So ls, we've already saw ls is a program that lives or is stored in the, what was it? Was it /bin or was it /user/bin? Whatever it was, right? It's in a directory somewhere. So if we know the name of that text editor program, we can just open it up directly. The one that is on Linux Mint by default is called Pluma. So if I type the command Pluma and I give it the name of this file that I just created, it will open up the text editor. Looks like this. That is all of the stuff that I just saved in that file. So let's take this text editor and let's add a line. Added by Pluma. Okay. So this is a GUI text editor. It pops up with its own window. All I have to do is click on a button to save. You can see that it's got a tab open here. So apparently this text editor will support opening multiple files at once, right? And then whenever I save, I can close to get out of there. So let's see what happens. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to run cat on the file that I just edited. I should see the line that I just added. And there it is, right? Added by Pluma. So that's the text editor that's on here by default. Another text editor that is very common is one called gedit or Gedit. If you do not have, like let's say you don't have gedit installed on your system. So if I do an apt remove gedit. I type gedit and it says something like this. Gedit is currently not installed. To run gedit, please ask your administrator to install it. Well, you guys are the administrator. Here's how you install it. Sudo, that means as an administrator, right? So that's the administrator command. Sudo apt install gedit. That's how you install new programs. Hit that, it's going to ask me if I want to install it. It looks like it's not going to ask me anything. It may pop up with a password. You just need to type in your user password and then it'll install it for you. After that, I now have gedit installed. So if you don't have gedit installed, you can install it.
It asked me for a password, but it wouldn't let me type the password in.
Well, that didn't sound right. If you look at this, I mean, this looks identical to Pluma, and I'm guessing that Pluma is a clone of gedit. So, I mean, look, the save button's right here. It looks very similar. So let's say added by gedit. All right, so that's not much different than Notepad. All right, open it back up. Yep, everything's good. All right, I'm going to cap that file, and then I see that line show up at the bottom. All right, now let's use a cool text editor. This one's called Nano. Nano is a terminal text editor. So when I type Nano, I'm just going to get a text editor that doesn't open up an external window. It just opens up the text in the terminal. And so now I can actually move around this file using the arrow keys. I can edit this file. But the problem is I can't click on things. There's no save button. There's no X to exit out. This is a terminal application. So the way that I save and exit is down here at the bottom. This is giving me a listing of my keyboard shortcuts. Now, why would you ever use a terminal-based text editor? There's a lot of reasons. For one, they're awesome. But also, like you just saw me log into my computer in my office, edit some text files, rerun a script that then updated the website, right? Well, logging into the computer, I can't access things like gedit that's on my computer remotely. I mean, I can, but it's a little more of a pain in the ass. But from a terminal, I can log into my machine, I get a command line, and then if I use command line text editors, I can edit text on my computer without doing anything extra or special. So it's useful to at least know how to use these in case you can only get a terminal into a machine that you're on. Like if you can't get your Windows, your windowing environments to pop up, you need to know how to use a text editor in the terminal. All right, so I'm gonna say added by Nano. Oh, and can't justify now. I don't know what it's doing for me. It's doing something weird. But I'm gonna look for these little shortcuts are sort of difficult to understand. There's only two that I ever use because I don't like to use Nano. Write out means save. This caret means control. So to save, you're going to do Control-O, and then it's going to say file name. It's going to ask you if you want to write it to the same file name. Yes. And then once you save, you can always, you can exit using Control-X. Maybe. I got something going on here. Is anybody else having this problem? Does anybody else even have Nano open?
I have Nano open, and I wrote stuff, saved it, closed out. Which, what was the command to download apps again? Because mine just told me that mine had a really sudo app. I tried doing it.
Sudo apt get. Name of the thing.
Okay. I forgot to get.
Okay, so
This
I think
app has super cow powers.
yes, the app does have super cow powers. Apt get or apt.
It said that me both when I typed in the wrong thing and when I typed in the correct thing.
Nano pass. Okay, so that should have worked. All right, so I'm going to add one more thing. Nope, I'm good. So those are text editors, right? What I suggest you do is pick a text editor, start figuring out how to use it. We're going to have stuff like very shortly, we're going to write shell scripts. You're going to have to write shell scripts in a text editor. Right? So find a text editor that you like to use and learn how to use it. All right, let me get back to where I was. Oh, that's not the right one. Must be Friday.
What?
Sure is.
We're just having quite a time.
Computer's already checked out.
Yep, the computer's ready to go. Oh, when is the queue open? Yeah. All right, so those are text editors. One thing that I want to, I meant to sort of talk about last time, you do not have to know this to do the current homework, but this is going to be a command that's very useful later on. And you could do some of the homework that's going to be due today. So we have a homework quiz due tonight. You got to upload your tarball tonight. You could have done some of the homework with the find command, but eventually this is going to be useful. So I'm just going to talk about some of the basic functionality of the find command. So let's say that you've got a directory that contains a bunch of directories and a bunch of files, and you know there's something in there that you want, but you don't know where that file is. Like, let's say you know the name of a file, but you don't know where it's located. Well, the find command does that for you, but it does a lot more than that. It allows you to find all files that match a pattern, but it's better than just ls star.txt because it does it recursively. You know, if I do ls star.txt, it will list any files in the current directory that end with .txt. But if there's files in subdirectories, it's not going to list those. So I'd have to do a /star.txt, but then that would only show text files that are in one subdirectory below where I'm at. The find command will search recursively. And so any files that are below the current working directory will be included in the output of the find command. So if I wanted to find all txt files that are in any subdirectory under the current working directory, then I do find /tac name and then star.txt. So there's one option that's being given to find in this command, and there's one argument. The argument is the directory. So / means search in this directory. If you wanted to search in only a subdirectory, you would give it the name of the subdirectory. And then find takes a bunch of options to limit how find is going to look for the files that you're asking for. One of those options is name, and name, you just give it a pattern that you want the file name to match. So I'm saying that I want the file name to end with .txt when I do this. The other useful options that the find command will have is that you can find all regular files in an entire directory tree by giving the type option. So type F says any file that's a regular file. For us, that means anything that's not a directory, right? So if we had txt files or bin files or out files, all of these could be listed. The other one, most common option or argument to give to type is D, and that will then only list directories. So let's say you wanted to see all of the directories that are in the current tree, you would do D. And then you can mix these, right? So if I say I want just directories that end with .d, right, I can say type D name star.d. Yeah.
So essentially you can search your whole.
You could search your entire system for stuff. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now that'll take a long time, but sometimes that's your only option. Like there's things where you've lost it somewhere and you're trying to find it. And so you use the find command.
So I figured out why that was returning such weird things.
What was it?
I forgot the tag before the type. So it's then trying to search for those as separate names.
Yeah. If you don't, so find will take multiple arguments, and those arguments are directory names. So if you did find /type D, it's probably looking for stuff in the current directory, a directory named type, and a directory named D. All right, so let's see find in action.
Those tags in and work perfectly well.
I'm glad we got that figured out. Going to go back to my home directory, and I'm going into my sandbox directory. I'm going to go back into the temp directory. Going to list out the contents here. ls star. So remember, if I run ls, it lists the contents of the current directory. When I do star, the shell gives me all of the things that are in that directory and hands it to ls, which is why ls now lists what's inside all of the directories here, like data, dir1, dir2, or dir10. All right, so let's run find, see what happens. Well, I get a listing of a bunch of files. These are all relative path names. So find with no command or with no arguments apparently just looks for everything that is in any subdirectory that is underneath the current working directory. And so you can see the relative path names that are printed out. Apparently there's a file named main.cpp in the dir10.d directory. That's actually just a shorthand, and I typically use this just to be explicit. Find // would mean look for everything that is underneath the current working directory, right? So find // is going to give you the same listing. But now I can start to narrow down the things that I want the find command to return. So this is me saying that I want, well, this is, I believe, me saying that I want all files that end with star.txt. This is not going to work though. You're going to get this really weird sort of error message that doesn't really tell you what the problem is. But here's what the problem is. The shell is expanding this star.txt before find gets it. So as far as find is concerned, the arguments that you're giving it are a list of all of the .txt files in the current directory. That's what was causing, this isn't the cause, but it's the same type of issue that Derek was having, was that he wasn't giving the thing that he should be giving as an argument to the option. So the way that you get around this is you got to put quotes around that star.txt. If you put single, it's got to be single quotes, I believe. If you put single quotes around that, the shell won't expand that. It gives that string to find, and now find looks for all of the files that match the pattern. So find is going to go through all the files that it finds and then try to see if it matches the pattern. And if it does, it's going to put it in the display list. If it doesn't, it's going to put it in the don't display list. I can do things like, well, I think we've already seen this right? Okay, good. We've already seen this. You can escape the star with a /. If you don't want to put quotes around it, you can escape it. Same as with the spaces, right? So this is going to be common for anything that has special meaning to the shell, like the question mark has special meaning to the shell. If you really need a question mark in there, you can escape it with a /. So this would give me a listing of all files that are underneath the current working directory, which is nice if I've got several files that are buried 2 or 3 layers down, right? I'm not going to be able to ls a pattern that gives me all of those files. So the find command will produce that, right? So this gives me files that are named .cpp, files that are named .dat. Everything that is a regular file is going to get listed. If I just want to look at the directories, I give type with a D, and this is the listing of directories. So apparently there's only 5 directories, and none of them are subdirectories. So there are no subdirectories in this tree. I can get a listing of all things, files or directories that end with .d, and there are some in here. Right, this is a directory. This is a file. ode.d is a file. So I'm getting files and directories listed here. I can limit the type by giving the type option. So here I'm listing everything that ends with .d but is a directory. And then here I'm listing everything that ends with .d but is a file. Right, so that's how I tell the difference between files and directories. All right, I'm going to go up one directory. And I'm going to run find on the current directory. So this is the entire sandbox. And so I'm going to get a list of all files that are in the current directory. And then I'm going to run wc tacl on that file, which means that I've now got a way to count the total number of files that exist in the sandbox. Right? That's 517 files. So we're gonna learn how to use the pipes to do this in one command, but it's still useful. If I know how to do file redirection, I can send output of a command to a file, and then I can do something else with the output of that command by using that file, right? So all I've done here is listed out all of the files that are in this sandbox, and then I ran wc on that. That's a quick way to count the total number of files that are in this sandbox. And that's really what the command line is about, is mixing tools that do certain things to get information that you don't have a tool that, you don't have a specific command that does that for you. If I look at all of these files, right here's all of the files then. These are all regular files, no directories in here. These are all of the files that are stored in this sandbox. I can do the same thing with directories. Right, so I'm going to save all of the directories in a file named directories.txt, and then I'm going to count how many directories there are. and there's only 27. So there must be, well, there's a lot fewer directories than there are files. If I run less here, I get a listing, right? So we've got, notice how find gives you the log directory and it gives you log/system. So it's going to list out everything in the tree that's a directory. So a parent directory will be listed on its own line, and then all of its subdirectories will be listed on their own line as well. And if you're, the book contains a chapter or contains a couple of sections on the find command, there's a lot more options. Like if you know what you want is 3 levels down, and you don't want to show anything above or below that, you can give options to limit how many levels down the find command is going to go, all that kind of stuff. Yep.
This is more about the the directory stacking, like how the directories stack inside themselves.
Mhm.
When you're going, like telling it to go down certain directories and stuff, when you're giving the like absolute direction commands, does ending it with a backslash affect the final position? Because I haven't seen any difference between
No.
the two commands.
No, it
I just
doesn't.
wanted to check.
If you end it with a, so let's see you're talking about, if I go into my sandbox, go into today's directory, which is,
Yeah, it's two.
0203. If I do this, it takes me in.
Okay.
If I do this, it takes me in.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's the same thing. The backslash, the only time that backslash has made a difference in anything that we've done in this class is if I wanted to get like a listing. Well, let's do an echo of all files and directories versus an echo of all directories. If you put that slash at the end of a pattern, it won't match regular files. It will only match directories.
Okay.
All right, so the difference here, echo star gives me, all of these things that are both directories and files, and then echo star slash only expands into things that are directories.
Because I noticed that whenever I would use the tab autocomplete, it would skip those on there. But when I was typing it out myself,
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
using them, I was just
There is
making
one
sure.
command that it matters on, and we're not going to use that command for a while, but rsync will interpret a slash at the end differently, but no other commands, I don't think, really interpret it differently. All right, so that's all the time that we have for today. Remember, there's homework that's due tonight. So upload your tarball, take the quiz.
Be pretty to love those at 11:59 again.
Yep. And I'm not going to have any homework posted this weekend